I have seen many people mention that their marriages eventually became sexless or experienced a significant drop in intimacy. For those of you who are or were in that situation, what do you think caused it? Was it stress, children, resentment, lack of attraction, medical issues, or something else? Did you try to fix it? So, what worked and what did not work? Looking back, do you wish you had done something differently? Story 1. It was never sexless, but things dropped off a little after menopause. I asked why, and she was a little embarrassed because she felt she was too dry and did not enjoy it as much anymore. I think this was only part of the reason. I also believe we were not putting in as much effort since the kids had grown up and we had settled into a routine. We talked it out, made more of an effort, and now have a healthy sex life. Story 2. Kids are ironically the #1 reason for sexless marriages. They come with many factors of varying degrees. The hormones, the touched-out phase, evolutionary instincts kicking in and going into overdrive, loss of rationality or ability to prioritize. The rejections, the resentment, the guilt, fear, and concern. Yes, kids are the root cause of platonic marriages. Story 3. I am female. My relationship is sexless because my partner suffers from erectile dysfunction. He has tried numerous treatments. Nothing has helped long-term. He is such a good man, and I love him so much that I accept it. Story 4. We lost our sexual intimacy for a couple of years, and I grew frustrated. We sat down together for a few nights as I asked her what I could do to be a better partner in bed. Initially, the conversation started with hopelessness and no chance for us to improve. Many of our issues stemmed from stress unrelated to our sex life. The conversations definitely required effort, but it was clear that I wanted intimacy and she did not. So, I tried to focus our sex life on her needs. We started introducing toys and having more date nights to set the mood. I made it incredibly clear that I love every inch of her body. It takes work and listening, and for your partner to be comfortable discussing these matters as well. Complaining about the lack of sex is not enough motivation for her to care. In fact, it makes her feel guilty. I am not trying to guilt anyone into having sex with me. Story 5. Man, it's rough reading these comments, but it's how people feel. I go crazy for some meaningful sex. I guess between having 2 small children and both of us working, it's a strange situation sometimes. I'm always in the mood. I'd love for it not to be obligatory, like on Father's Day or my birthday. I want it to be spontaneous and in the moment, not a quickie and no foreplay. If I have to hear, go ahead, it won't take you that long. Or, okay, but you have to do all the work. I'd rather just hold off and not have any. It does get a little hard not to feel bitter. She mentioned this morning how I haven't tried to initiate in the past 4 days, and I just told her, I know. Story 6. Not me, but a woman I know. Her husband will not touch her, not even a hug. They sleep in different bedrooms. They have not been physically together for about 3 years. They managed to have 2 children with a lot of effort, but he has told her he does not want anything to do with her physically anymore. She is only about 34 and very attractive. He is a strange man. I have no idea what his issue is. Story 7. Our child does not sleep through the night very often and ends up in our bed, so we can at least get some rest. My wife is sick quite frequently and does not feel well more than half the time. Story 8. Wow, this could not have come at a better time. I am 33, dating a 30-year-old for almost a year now. She has a great personality and is beautiful, but she is not very interested in intimacy. It is not just about sex. If we are kissing, it is usually me kissing her, and she just allows it but never reciprocates. Honestly, it feels like I am kissing a mannequin. She just sits there. We have discussed this, and she says she does not know why, but she has a low libido. I am wondering if I should end things before we get married. Story 9. Every marriage left untended to a varying degree becomes that way. This phenomenon is well known and documented. You get what you put into your marriage or do not. Your marriage will fail if you put sex at the center of your union. Story 10. Oh my dude. Kids, job stress, financial stress, life stress, poor communication, and more. My wife and I recently reconciled after years of drifting apart. We would go once every month, maybe, And that was in the morning because I would roll over and convince her it would be quick. Over the last few months, we have finally started talking about important things again. We also both recently switched jobs and are making a lot more money than we used to. This resolves poor communication, financial stress, and job stress. These also reduce life stress, and we have hit a renaissance of sorts. We have been having sex twice a day for weeks now. She initiates, not me. And we have been exploring a lot more. She is into giving oral sex for the first time in our lives and is encouraging me to explore some things I have kept to myself. We still have a 5-year-old, but he can finally somewhat self-automate, which is nice, and we are finally connected again. Story 11. In my case, it was my ex-wife's mental health and her own issues with intimacy and self-image. I ended up having zero attraction for her. Looking back, I did all I could, but she basically did nothing, so I have moved on with another person. Story 12. My wife went into perimenopause, which reduced her libido. Then she had a hysterectomy and felt new sensations, but it seems she prefers alone time and pornography instead. We have sex, but it is not great, and I am getting really frustrated because it is always on her terms. I believe her use of pornography is part of the problem. She does not seem interested and is often daydreaming, likely thinking of porn scenes. This is becoming a problem. I have never had issues with sex in past relationships. Story 13. Kids. I am the horniest dude on earth, yet 99% of the time I just want to lie in bed and stare at the ceiling. My wife is very attractive, but we are just so tired, so very tired. It is hard to find a time when we both have the energy. That is okay. We chose this journey together. She is my person. I am her person. Story 14. She got what she wanted. A house, a marriage, and me paying all the bills. Then she informed me that sex was painful. Mind you, she had 2 children prior to us getting together. So apparently she faked it for 20 years. We do not do anything together that does not involve social obligations. She is civil and my friends and family love her. Story 15. A very long downward slide over 10 years. Her health took a big hit, and stress related to COVID-19 finally worsened things in 2020. Even before then, I think we lost something in our communication. She threw herself into work at an unsustainable level, and I became an angry, depressed mess at my old job. I'm not sure we were ever sexually compatible. We were each other's first partners. She is a childhood sexual abuse survivor, and most of what I knew about sex came from pornography. A difficult combination. We finally have a treatment plan for her health, and I have left my old job for a better one. I am slowly learning how to manage my anger and communicate better. We both probably need therapy. I have hope we will get there. It will likely still take a few years at this rate. Story 16. I am a 29-year-old woman. One of my biggest fears is getting married and then having my husband reject me sexually, resulting in a sexless marriage. That rejection would absolutely devastate me. I have a healthy sexual appetite, and even when I'm stressed, tired, or going through changes, I still want to have sex. Maybe even more than usual. Partners have weaponized this against me before, which made me feel awful. This is a huge fear of mine when thinking about marriage. Story 17. My ex-boyfriend of 12 years simply did not like me. I thought I did not have a high sex drive. Now I have met my future husband, and I am having more sex at 35 than I did in my 20s. Story 18. In the case of my first marriage, we were incompatible sexually. She wanted rough sex and profanity, and I could not do it. Then she cheated on me. We had small children and did not want to divorce, but sex with her was mentally very difficult for me. For 20 years, we rarely were intimate. When I remarried, my sex life was full again. Story 19. Physical bodies and responses will change for both men and women over the years. Desire for sex will vary for many different reasons. That is why, in my opinion, intimacy should not be based solely on sex. You should marry someone because you love them as a person more than you need to use their body for your own sexual gratification, which you can achieve yourself. You should try to create intimacy and closeness in other ways. When you have that intimate connection without sex, sex becomes an added bonus to the intimacy that is already there. So, when desire for the act wanes or varies occasionally, closeness will remain, and both partners will still feel loved. This makes communication about issues surrounding sex much easier. Story 20. My husband stopped bathing because he was depressed and would only bathe 3 times a month. He smelled terrible. I tried to get him help and encouraged him to see his therapist and to shower, but nothing worked. He had the audacity to start talking to other women, essentially having an emotional affair, and then blamed me for not giving him enough attention or having sex with him. When I told him all he had to do was bathe. Story 21. We had problems from the beginning. We are in our 40s now, and finally, sex is really good for both of us. But that took decades. Our marriage was not sexless because of children, we do not have any, or because of stress or work. It was because of shame, deep religious shame. We were raised in a conservative faith that taught us sex is fine as long as you never lose control. Pleasure was allowed, but only if you stayed in the saddle with both hands tightly gripping the reins. Religion taught us to enjoy, but not too much, like riding a horse. Certain sexual acts were considered unclean in God's eyes until as recently as 2025. Even though some of those teachings were softened, the damage was already done. Truly great sex, the kind that is bonding, freeing, and overwhelming in a good way, requires surrender. Letting go. Not worrying about how God might feel about your orgasm. When the thought is Jehovah watching floats in the back of your mind during sex, it is not intimacy. It is surveillance. That is not spirituality. That is trauma. We did not need sex therapy. We needed therapy, period. Therapy to deconstruct the mental programming that taught us to feel guilty for wanting, receiving, or being fully in our bodies. We were constantly worried about displeasing God. Sex requires 2 minds to meet. That is already complicated enough without religious anxiety hovering over the bed. Our religion told us we could learn about sex by talking to mature Christians. But that is like trying to learn fine cuisine from people who have only ever eaten plain rice and beans. All they can teach is how to cook bland meals, and when that does not satisfy you, they tell you to work on being content. Eventually, you just stop cooking. You stop having sex. It becomes not worth the effort. That is what happened to us. Here is what is different now. Even though my wife still is not comfortable with graphic sexual education or masturbation, she has grown to appreciate how much I have learned. She has seen how my willingness to educate myself has made me a more confident, generous lover. I last longer. I listen better. I pay attention to what actually brings her pleasure. That has made a difference for both of us. So no, we did not fix our sex life by praying harder or doubling down on clean conduct. We fixed it by confronting the shame that made sex feel sinful in the first place. The best sex education we have ever had started with giving ourselves permission to unlearn what religion taught us. Story 22. You do not get married to be celibate. If one partner does not want to be intimate over an extended period of time, for example, a year, excluding illness, a divorce should be granted. Alternatively, the other partner should be allowed to find a friend with benefits. Story 23. His pornography addiction and stress from being unemployed have been ongoing for 4 months. He knows and we have talked, but at this point it is like talking to a wall. Story 24. Marriage is the goal for some, and sexual intimacy is the tool they use to reach this goal. Once the goal is reached, the tool is no longer needed. Hence, marriages become sexless. Children are not as big a factor as people think. There are many childless couples in sexless marriages. Want to avoid a sexless marriage? Do not marry. Story 25. When I was with my ex back then, it ended because I felt unwanted and feared rejection. She did not initiate it often. Story 26. Not 100% sexless, just very little sex due to self-inflicted stress and medical issues on her part. I did try to help, but in general, there is not much to be done. She either cares or she does not. Regarding stress, I tried taking care of almost all of everything that was not her actual job. Every hoop you could jump through, I did. I still tried to take her on dates, took her on vacations, gave her compliments, and so on. That did nothing, and that's when I learned that the saying, "If you did X, we might have more intimacy," was a complete lie. They just find new things to stress about. and there will never be enough time, money, or energy to relieve someone who craves stress. She seemed to take her lack of home responsibilities as a sign that she should greatly increase her work responsibilities, so she started bringing baggage home every night. The medical issues include hormonal imbalance, depression, anxiety, and a general refusal to take care of herself. She started becoming anemic, had dangerously low levels of vitamin B12 and vitamin D, while the iron pills and vitamins sit on the counter untouched. The depression and anxiety are still strong and have been a huge strain on us. I am totally burnt out from caring about it at this point. There is nothing you can do to beat someone else's depression. It has led to the point where I disregard anything she says she is looking forward to. I put on a fake smile and fake excitement in the moment, but I know when the moment arrives I will hear she doesn't feel well, is tired, doesn't really want to go, or has a headache. I have hurt myself several times by forgetting that she does this with extreme consistency. I'll ask her if she wants to go on a date on a Friday. She says yes and acts excited. Friday night happens, and she is, of course, tired and wants to go tomorrow. I say that sounds good. Then tomorrow comes, and she either starts a fight early in the day or uses one of the same excuses. By Sunday, I don't care anymore but wait to see if she will bring it up. She never does. Over the next few days, I dream of being able to just go on a simple date again, not even with her, and sex is not even on my mind. Looking back, what do I wish I had done differently? Refused to get married until she had her depression fully addressed. That might have been never, but that would have been okay. Story 27. He was fired from his job, which caused him to develop generalized anxiety. I did not realize it, but it affected our bedroom. Intimacy gave him anxiety, and he always felt judged. The more I complained about the lack of intimacy, the more anxiety it caused him. I do not think he had a strong libido to begin with, and coupled with the anxiety, he stopped wanting to be intimate. This was the primary cause of our divorce. Story 28. I think you all expect things to be the same. How about adjusting and creating new forms of intimacy? Something that applies to your current situation, not when you were 20 and before children. Story 29. I think that she considered sex a chore that she could avoid at almost every opportunity. Finally, she told me that sex just was not worth the effort to her. That it was messy. Did I try to fix it? Not hard enough. We talked about it a little, and frankly, I was hurt and mad, but I stayed hoping that she would change her mind. She did not. Looking back, I wish that I had packed up and left. We would have eventually both been happier. Story 30. It is not sexless, but we go through dry spells from time to time due to normal factors such as sickness or injury, stress at work, exhaustion from having a child, and so on. Story 31. Breast cancer. In her 30s. 10 years remission this December. No intimacy since then. A decade. She has zero desire, especially with all the surgeries she has had and chemotherapy pushing her into menopause. It is all good though. I have her. Story 32. Ask my wife because I definitely do not know exactly. One day it is this, another day it is that. Ironically, when the rare occasion occurs or has occurred, there is no mistake she orgasms. For the doubters, she produces heavy liquids. It is not an actual squirt but the equivalent. And no people, it is not pee. Story 33. My wife and I drifted apart and were not prioritizing each other. We have been working for the past year to fix that and are now having sex at least twice a week. It has been fantastic. I am completely off pornography and only see her. I am very attracted to her at all times of the day, and it drives her nuts. I have to force myself not to grab her at every moment. She initiated sex last night for the first time in many years. Life has been good. Story 34. Stress, poor communication, and weight gain affected both of us. This happened after having our child. I was stressed from work because it was very busy, and she wasn't working much at the time. With that stress, we both started eating more and gained a lot of weight. Being overweight and stressed lowered our sex drive, and we didn't talk about it. The issue built up over the years. I had a lot of resentment towards her, but I now realize it wasn't fair to her because I am just as much at fault, if not more. That was over 20 years ago. We both lost the weight and are pretty healthy now. There is no sexual relationship. We are roommates and friendly with each other but heading toward divorce. Story 35. Our sex life was nearly absent for 8 years, occurring only 8 to 12 times a year. This was due to having a child, focusing more on screen time, and less on my wife, not realizing how important physical touch is for her. Once I put my phone down and began touching her, our sex life returned to a new normal, resulting in more sex than before having the child. Part of this improvement was because her vagina needed to be stretched to eliminate frequent urinary tract infections prior to having the child. Story 36. 15 years of marriage. Right after or during a date, literally seconds before intimacy, she said something that made me realize this is not a till death do us part situation at all. I am the only one who genuinely wants a future together. She is just settling. My libido and desire for intimacy disappeared within seconds, and I went from a hugger to not wanting to touch her. Feels wildly inappropriate. Turns out any intimacy, physical or otherwise, was always initiated by me, and it instantly became a desert. Any attempt to discuss this results in her telling me to leave her alone. It has been months, and it seems she is fine with how things are. While the relationship is definitely sexless, I do not think this is a marriage anymore except from a legal standpoint. Story 37. It's not sexless, but her frequency dropped from rabbits to once every 4 to 8 weeks. We both work full-time, have no kids, but she plays several mobile games in every single free minute, not wanting to lose points or whatever. We get up between 6 o'clock and 7 a.m., and she plays until 11 p.m. or later. So, there is not much time for other activities, though she says I am always too tired for it. When we have sex, it's mostly about her. I love pleasing her in every possible way, vary a lot, try new things, and am really passionate about it. She orgasms easily from oral sex, hand stimulation, penetrative intercourse, toys, in any position, at any time within minutes, multiple times. I, on the other hand, don't feel much during penetrative intercourse and don't orgasm automatically. It is enough to know it's still inside and stay hard, but nothing more. I need manual help, but in most cases, she does not touch me at all. If she does, it is barely with enthusiasm, mostly quick and mechanical to get the job done. Oral sex lasts maybe 15 seconds. The toys we gifted each other last Christmas. Mine are not yet used. My wishes, like the idea of using lubricant, do not happen. Often, she stops for any reason or just falls asleep. I get it. It is just too much hard work for her, so she does not do it often and puts no effort into it. I do not think blue balls really exist physically, but mentally they do. When I pleasure her, I usually think I will not get anything in return again. If she initiates, which happens rarely, I think the same. Often she rides me, and once she orgasms, it's done. I do not know what is worse. No sex or always being neglected like that. Story 38. I enjoy exploring various kinks, as sharing them is where I find intimacy. There may be aspects I could improve in myself, but I accept my preferences. My wife participated while we were dating, but after we married and had a child, she lost interest in indulging me. That is her loss, in my humble opinion. Story 39. For me, a 52-year-old male, it was because my wife, a 52-year-old female, was molested as a child from ages 3 to 16. When we first got married, she was hypersexual for a couple of weeks. Then it became once every 2 weeks, once a month, once a quarter, 1 to 2 times per year, and then once every 3 to 4 years. At about year 3, I made mistakes in several ways, webcamming with a woman once, kissing a woman without tongue on a business trip, and general flirting with intent that never progressed. I confessed these to her about a year later, and she was upset with me for a long time, which put a lot of strain on the marriage. However, I have not done anything against her in 20 years. We recently had a discussion where she is returning to therapy, and she finally fully forgave me for my failures. Maybe the situation will change. Story 40. Not really sure what a marriage full of physical intimacy is like. By choice, married as virgins. Then nothing but failed attempts, anticlimactic efforts, and empty pursuits from there. Not saying religion caused it, but there is no trauma or medical history to prevent a fulfilling life. Moral and ethical values keep me grounded in the roommate situation. In hindsight, I would do things very differently before marriage and would know exactly what a woman's touch should feel like. Story 41. My marriage became nearly sexless because of antidepressants. We have no children, and I am no longer married. Story 42. Yes, we definitely have been through a few dry spells. The first time was because we had our children back to back. Life was very hectic for about 3 to 4 years. Things were very dry then. The last time, things just grew stale. We both talked about our fantasies and what we could do to spice things up. It worked. We have spiced things up and are good. Story 43. I am a 43-year-old male. My ex-wife and I never had children. We got together at 18, and things were wild for a while. But time passed. We got married, moved closer to her family, and bought a house. To her, sex became a form of currency. If I wanted her to build something or hang a shelf, sex was the reward. I was naive to how this had changed. Sex was scheduled only on certain days of the week. There was no more spontaneity. Later, she told me that once she had me trapped in the marriage with a house where she wanted to live, she no longer needed to use sex to keep me around. She believed I was so trapped that I would never leave, allowing her to maintain her two-income lifestyle. But friends helped me with money so I could file for divorce and get my own place. That was 6 years ago, and I have not had sex since. I do not remember what sex feels like. Story 44. I have never had this issue with my spouse, but many marriages around us are sexless. We have heard everything from the basic blue chew needed, to my wife does not think she is attractive, to the husband getting tired of an unhelpful, lazy wife. It is a combination of many things, but mostly miscommunication. The couples are not talking about their own issues or those of their partners and end up having a very twisted form of relationship. I have also noticed that all of those relationships started with sex instead of love. It may sound corny, but it is true. If you really love your partner, you strive to make them happy. For example, toys for her or sex with him when not in the mood. Maybe a little romance if she wants that, or a little video games to help him relax beforehand. Even just feeding your partner foods that help with sex drive and performance. Couples get so focused on the act itself that they forget about the person they are doing it with. Story 45. I can share some insight from a family member's situation, as I've seen this up close. I found out about it by tricking our house help into confessing. He got talkative after a few drinks and admitted to a 5-year affair with her. In her case, the marriage had become nearly sexless due to a mix of emotional and physical disconnect. She felt her husband was emotionally distant, often ignoring her needs both sexually and in terms of attention because he was consumed by work and his medical condition. She told him he left her feeling unsatisfied during their intimate moments, which built resentment and loneliness over time. The house help saw her vulnerability as an opportunity and seduced her, starting a relationship that was purely sexual at first but grew emotional as she started developing feelings for him, likely because he filled the void of feeling desired. They didn't really address the intimacy issues before the affair started. There wasn't much open communication about their needs, which made things worse. After the affair came to light, they had some tough conversations where she admitted her frustrations, and he acknowledged his role in being distant. They are now trying to rebuild with a fresh start, but it is a rocky process. Story 46. Sex has never been an issue in my relationship with my ex. Technically, we still sleep together when we visit. It just sucks that he gave up on our relationship. Story 47. My wife has a bad attitude towards men. She is fine with the children, friends, and family. However, when I am around, her facial expression is unpleasant, and I cannot stand it. That attitude keeps me away. Story 48. A combination of factors, mostly due to significant mental health struggles that were never fully addressed or side effects of those struggles. Children really compounded the situation. Social media and some toxic content consumption probably contributed as well. Story 49. My partner lost her libido completely as a side effect of taking hormonal pills after endometriosis. There is nothing to be done, really. Story 50. because sex was all about his pleasure and not about mine. When I decided to take my own pleasure into my own hands, I was considered sinful. Story 51. I cannot say for certain, but I was very codependent, and if we were not doing well, I was not doing well. Subservience is not attractive. I am getting amicably divorced. I have learned so much since moving on. I should have valued myself more and moved on sooner. Story 52. She became ill. We had an incredible intimate life, and then she became ill. Intimacy is now very painful for her, and anytime she wants to try, I know it is mostly for my sake because of how much I miss it. However, I cannot do something that will cause her pain. I love her too much. It is difficult. Story 53. Well, my testosterone levels have dropped in my 60s, and my wife is going through menopause in her 50s, so sex is not really a thing around here right now. That is fine with me. We are still intimate with each other, and it is very pleasant. I am not vibrating whenever an attractive woman enters the room, which is, frankly, a relief. Story 54. Trying for children became a chore after a while. After she became pregnant, it felt like she planned on never having sex again. They divorced soon after. Story 55. Women are often too tired to make the effort. Most men will endure great discomfort to have sex even with a woman who is uninterested. Story 56. I feel like children are not an excuse. If anything, my husband and I have sex more because we have so many children. That is one of the ways we connect during this current season of life. Also, how do you think we keep making all these children? Laugh out loud. Story 57. Maybe not just the kids, but changes in personality and body make them a different person than the one you used to love. I guess I'm still too young and immature to realize that you have to grow up and grow with who they are and still love and have intimacy with them. I don't have kids. I definitely think this is more of an issue with less exotic or less attractive people who do not have an athletic or healthy-looking lifestyle and physique. Men love with their eyes first, then with emotion. Story 58. My ex-wife was diagnosed with lichen sclerosis mere weeks after we got married. Basically, her vulva developed scar tissue and later became sore. Fissures appeared, and her openings started to seal up. She was often uncomfortable with painful itching. The idea of asking her to do anything sexual for me at that point made me feel like the typical selfish, horny kind of man she said she had always had to deal with in her past, so the sex basically stopped and I resorted to masturbation. She had, according to her, had many sexual partners in the past. She was apparently never the aggressor, but when someone is kissing and touching you, it makes it difficult to say no. She was also a stripper and had a sugar daddy at one point. She was the attractive girl for whom the interest ran straight to her door. Never mind the fact that we never kissed the way I wanted to. She didn't seem to like tongues unless she was very turned on, and then her tongue was taut and a bit too busy for what I had experienced with others. Never once did we kiss softly and slowly with relaxed, gentle tongues and open mouths softly moving together. I raised these issues before we got married, but she dismissed them because I had hardly any partners before. Less than 10 and only a couple of steady girlfriends, and she'd had hundreds of men and women and never had any complaints. I tried to reason that one-night stands or short-term relationships are not usually going to respond after the fact with a critique, but she said I knew nothing about women and had little experience. It turned out to be a devastating blow to our intimate life that I said I didn't like the way she kissed. She claimed to be someone who was just honest and saying what was on her mind, but my mentioning that the kissing could be better during an open and honest discussion about sex was what made her clam up. We were married for 25 years. We went to therapy and everything. I used to say I felt like sex started with a kiss, so we could never get it off the ground. She said she needed to be turned on before it got to that point, and that she didn't want me to ram my tongue into her mouth like a gay guy. I know I didn't do that. I approached her gingerly, and there was lengthy foreplay that included full-body massages with scented oils and brushing her hair, which she said was a big turn-on. Soft music and candlelight. I was always very eager and desperate to make it work. And then, of course, it had to be purely oral because she was mostly sealed up. She had an operation to open her at the 8-year point, but we didn't keep it up, and she sealed up again. She did orgasm, though. I had asked her many times to tell me what made someone a good lover to her. And the most useful information I ever got was from a man around town who, ran her a bath, told her she was beautiful and had pretty eyes. So, after 25 sexually frustrating years, I divorced her and got back with a childhood sweetheart. I had never forgotten her incredible kisses. We've been together for 16 years, and we have regular, deeply gratifying sex. Story 59. Low testosterone in men and menopause in women play a major role. Additionally, many couples stop dating or doing anything exciting together, sometimes out of complacency, other times because of unresolved issues or lingering resentment. Marriage takes work. You have to make a conscious effort to continue doing the things that make it exciting and passionate, even when life gets busy or comfortable. Story 60. Having children and not prioritizing intimacy led to a serious dead bedroom situation for my wife and me that lasted far longer than I would like to admit. A lack of time and effort contributed to it, and it was compounded by poor communication. For many people, even those who have been together a long time, especially them, talking about sex is very difficult. The longer you avoid the conversation, the harder it becomes. Fortunately, my wife and I were able to get things back on track by improving our communication. However, our sexless situation lasted an embarrassingly long time. Story 61. Hell no, it was never about a child, to be honest. It was his family who disrespected me for years and expects me to be attracted to you. The worst betrayal. I have so much resentment for him. Forget sex. Story 62. I have been happily married for 30 years. We have always had a very active sex life, usually 2 to 3 times a week. Over the past year, sex dwindled to maybe once a month, and then nothing for the past 4 months. His testosterone was tested and found to be low. He has been on testosterone replacement therapy for a month now, and he still has no desire and experiences erectile dysfunction. It hurts us both to even say we are in a sexless marriage because we do love one another. To go from a very active sex life to nothing is depressing. We have been focusing on walks, snuggles, and the difficult conversations about what we can do to feel close without having sex. It has been challenging and depressing because we miss the sexual part of our relationship. Hopefully, in the next few months, the testosterone replacement therapy will help. This is just a genuine view of what I think is more common but not often talked about. I am 50 years old, female. My husband is 55. We have 2 grown children. It is difficult, but we are working through it and standing by one another. Story 63. For me, it was off and on, mostly work. I work from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m., and when I come home, I want to eat and sleep. My wife practically never wanted to be intimate until after 10 p.m., but doing all that left me getting about 6 hours of sleep, which was impacting the rest of my life in a very negative way. So, I guess my answer to your question is that at first it was convenient, and then it became resentment. The resentment came from the fact that to meet one of our needs, the other had to go without, so we were practically in a tug of war over getting what we needed. I just started waking her up at 5 a.m. Now we both get an extra few hours to do what we need to do without the stress of taking what we want and hurting the other person to do it. Story 64. My wife's dog kept jumping on the bed at random hours of the night, sometimes hurting me. On top of that, the dog barks loudly at night about twice a month, often for no reason. My wife often invites the dog onto the bed. I tried for a very long time, but the lack of sleep ruined my days. I disciplined him, but she rarely did. I felt awful not sleeping and became guarded whenever I heard him moving, expecting him to jump on the bed and land on me. I was getting very little sleep, which I need more than 2 or 3 hours a night. Eventually, after asking for the dog to be trained, crated, or kept out of the room at night and getting nowhere, I started sleeping in another room. I feel human again now that I can sleep, but my wife now sleeps in the room with the dog rather than with me. If I am not in the bed, well, sex stops as a result. Story 65. Schopenhauer described it beautifully. Sex is the tool women use to be provided for and to create the next generation. Once they achieve that goal, sex is no longer necessary to them. Imagine a hammer you use to build a house. In the beginning, you will be using it all day and night, but once you achieve your goal of building the house, there is no real need for the hammer, and its use becomes less frequent. This is the same principle as women and sex. It is a tool for them to get what they want and need in life. Story 66. Lack of communication affected our marriage. We both worked and I had medical issues, but ultimately, we entered our marriage with different expectations of our roles and what daily married life should look like. My wife's expectations were lower than mine. I wish we had discussed these expectations before we got married. We have been married for over 30 years, but only recently can I describe it as truly happy because my therapist encourages us to discuss important issues and act on those discussions. Story 67. She is not attracted to you. It is not some hormone imbalance or vaginismus. She either lost interest in you over the years or she was never really that into you. I guarantee you, Henry Cavill walks into the bedroom and all of a sudden, it will be Niagara Falls. It is hard for men to hear, but I have been through it twice in 2 6-year relationships. Story 68. Menopause. Don't worry about an age gap, gentlemen. If you are a healthy, active male who enjoys sex, a 10 to 15-year age gap is nothing. Story 69. We had sex frequently until we had our children. After agreeing that there would be no more children, sex has practically vanished. Obviously, this is all my fault. Story 70. The worst part is that these women will fight hard against men having mistresses or even sex robots or dolls. They just want their man to suffer. They do not care about their man. They only care about the relationship. Story 71. As a woman, my last relationship was difficult because of him. He was never affectionate. No cuddles just for the sake of cuddling, no kisses, no compliments, no love. He used sex as a treat. He'd literally say to me, "We just went out and had fun. Why can't we come home and do something I want?" I would tell him he's not a dog. Sex isn't a reward he gets for doing something he's supposed to do. It got to the point where I was physically disgusted being near him because he would only touch me to try and initiate sex. Then he would get mad and go to the bathroom to masturbate. This started a few years into our relationship and I put up with it for 5 more years, one of which we were married. I used to think I had some kind of problem or was asexual, but in my current relationship, the longest we've gone without having sex was 2 weeks after I found out I was pregnant, and that was just because I read it could trigger a miscarriage. I ended up miscarrying anyway, but we resumed intimacy. Right now, we are on an 8-day involuntary abstinence streak because I am very sick. We've been together a year, so life has been like this for about 9 months. Of course, when we didn't live together, it was 1 to 2 times a week, but now it's 3 to 4 times, depending on how work went that day. Since he has a physical job, he gets tired, and I work with children and feel mentally drained some days. I know it's early, but having someone who is so loving without the goal being sex is very important. Story 72. There are growth hormone therapies available for both men and women. Men over 40 should consider testosterone replacement therapy. If you have low testosterone, it may be the reason for a decreased interest in sex. Women also need testosterone to maintain energy levels. Additionally, these hormone therapies can address other health issues and help with significant weight loss. Women may experience fewer menopausal symptoms, and there should be no sexless bedrooms or marriages unless there is a physical medical issue. People need to stop making excuses, make time, and prioritize their relationships. The more excuses you make, the longer you delay, and it should not be that way. Story 73. Why do you want to know what business it is if it is yours? It is simple, mate. People become ugly, attitudes change. You sign up to have sex with one person a couple of times a year. Look at a 23-year-old girl, then 40, then 50, and the same goes for men. I am surprised at your question. Story 74. Tell her to come with you to the gym. She will feel sexier and, in return, be more intimate. Just take it slow at first and do not scare her away from it. Story 75. People who aren't compatible long-term find out eventually. I'm beginning to wonder if the Chinese had this figured out better. I still do government contracts occasionally. 2 ladies I deal with are Chinese astrology goats. They often annoy me, though I often find myself going back to them or waiting until they are available instead of their other team members. I never used to believe in this stuff, but as I age, I'm noticing patterns that work long-term and ones that don't. It's them and hairs. I'd love to play with an artificial intelligence plugin for Facebook and other platforms that played out here for a few years and then look at the outcomes. Story 76. I would appreciate some perspective on this. My husband, age 38, and I, age 36, have been together for 14 years. We have not had any sexual interaction for at least the last 7 years, though I have lost count. This is mainly due to him cheating multiple times early in our relationship, as well as differences in sexual preferences. At this point, I am sexually frustrated all the time but want to explore with other men. Do you think it is worth having a conversation about this? Or would he see it as me cheating? Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.